After a wild week for cannabis stocks, we wanted to see what the smoke signals say. What are some of these big risks that the industry has been warning investors about? It's important to remind ourselves what those are. And so to do that, we poured through what you mentioned as so-called risk factors. That's the section within some of the IPO prospectuses for some of the more recent and pending IPOs. And there has been a big surge in IPOs in the marijuana space. At the top of most companies' risk factors, regulation. And it's clear that the tiniest approval or setback can send these stocks on a roller coaster ride. Take Tilray, for example. The stock has surged about 20% this week, but that's only after paring back much of the 66% gains from Wednesday alone. The big boost was largely thanks to the DEA allowing Tilray to import medical marijuana for a clinical trial in California. And as Canada readies for decriminalization of the industry 1 month from today, investors are getting increasingly excited. But disapprovals can just as easily send stocks lower. Tilray's first 5 risk factors in its July prospectus involve the company's dependence on regulatory leeway to grow, process, package, store, sell, and export medical cannabis. The issue of legality and the company's compliance with the rules in place are critical, and one material change or misstep could be detrimental to the stock price of any cannabis-oriented company, guys.
Leslie, we were talking earlier, and it seems like from an investor's perspective, you almost have to take a biotech approach to these stocks, right? Where it's like, well, I can kind of calculate what the ultimate market size might be, what this company's opportunity might be, but it almost all depends on some kind of legal or regulatory, judgment out there.
It's binary, but there's a bit more complexity when it comes to these things. For example, insurance. A lot of these companies can't get the insurance like a normal agriculture company would get, whereas if their crop is destroyed, there's nothing they can do. There's no recourse, whereas a traditional farmer would have insurance for that crop, depending on the cause of what destroyed it. And so it's different layers of complexity, different layers of regulation. It's that entire ecosystem that really needs to be institutionalized. Otherwise, it makes it very difficult to value these companies. If you're an investor, obviously you can look at the total potential market opportunity for these things, but without knowing the full rules and regulations, it's really difficult to assess how big that market will ultimately become, and that could take years, decades, maybe even a century before we really know.
And Leslie, what about who owns these stocks at the moment? How much data do we have on that? And do you think the buyers of these stocks are fully taking account of all the risks that you just outlined?
So I know at least on the hedge fund side, there has been a huge interest on the short side. People look at these things and they see the run up, and there's a lot of talk about bubbles in the institutional investor community and a potential way to trade that. Now, according to people familiar with the prime brokerages within the banks, this is a stock that's pretty much run up as high as it can go from a short standpoint. It's very, very difficult for institutional investors to short this thing now. Very, very expensive. They're spending about $4.5 million a day in expenses related to shorting these things. So for now, it's very difficult to get into it from the bearish side of the trade. It's a long only play. The ups and the downs are long only. So a lot of retail interest on that side.